I'm going to hand over to Chris Weavers for this session. Chris, if you don't already know Chris, he's our National Official for Campaigns and Communications. So those fantastic emails you have on a Friday that tell us about what campaigns and what's going on, it's all Chris's work. And I'm going to hand over to this session to Chris. I don't know if you're going to have questions and answers, or you can manage it yourself, and I'll come back in at the end.
Great, thank you, President. And we're looking a bit thinner on the ground. I'm desperately hoping that's because people are wanting to venture out onto the M42 and get home rather than anticipation of this session. But thank you. And I remember Patrick earlier in the day said he didn't want to steal my thunder in terms of his remarks, but still the nature of these things is the General Secretary gets to do the exciting political stuff and the rest of us come in behind and deal with some of the mechanics. And that's really what I wanted to focus on just briefly with a presentation to you about some of the organising challenges around this. You know, when we started off along this route, I think it was very clear to us this was a huge challenge. You know, we haven't undertaken a national ballot in England, Wales and Scotland for 12 years. Last time was around the pensions dispute, so over a decade ago. We were in a world then where there weren't, as there are now, tens of thousands of employers. The complexity of this is incredibly difficult, and we know from both for the staff and for our lay activists, you know, it could actually be a bit overwhelming at once. So we've been trying to set out a plan that breaks this down a bit and creates manageable tasks that target various groups. So if our colleagues at the back, just to click us forward a slide. There we go. So this has been circulated to local secretaries, to national executive members, but I wanted to share it here because I think there's a way in which all of you can join into this activity. Is everybody aware in the room of the thresholds that have to be met for strike action now, or for industrial action full stop? I can see some nods, some people looking and will not be really sure around that. For trade unions in the UK, it's no longer the case, as it once was, that you simply have to get 50% of your members to vote in favour of industrial action. We now, as a result of legislation introduced in 2016, have to meet two thresholds. The first of those is that you need to get 50% of your members to vote in favour of the action. The second is that you need 40% of your membership, whether or not they vote, to vote in favour. So that means if 50% of your members actually vote, 80% of those need to vote in favour. So there's two significant challenges, and all of you will, I think, probably have got sick of me sending you emails, text messages and the like over the last 4 months trying to get you to update your details with us. Understandably, when people move house, the first thing they think of is probably curtains and carpets, not must update my membership on the union website. But my instinct is the vast majority of members who get a ballot paper will vote. We've got a real challenge just to make sure that members are getting those ballot papers because people's details fall out of date. But for those who have got them, yeah, Patrick did his straw poll earlier in the room, and not everybody in this room, and let's face it, you're at the conference today, I think by any judge you'd be deemed activists, or at least active members of the union, and not everybody here had cast them. So it is really important that we spend the time to remind each other the importance of this. And to break that down, we've got a weekly strategy. Do you want to take?
Oh, it's all right. I was going to wait till the end, but you can come in now if you want to.
Yeah, wait until the end. We'll come back to it.
Yeah, at the end.
So what we've done is a weekly planner to help guide the work of national executive members and secretaries. And you see behind me the focus in the first week is very much on large workplaces. You know, that's going to correspond in most places to secondary schools, possibly sixth form colleges. We then, if we skip forward a slide, focus on some of those smaller ones. I can do it myself. Magic. You'd think I'd understand about communications technology, wouldn't you? Focusing on primary schools and a different group of our members, one that we know is often difficult to persuade, or harder at least than secondary members, to take industrial action, partly because of their concerns about the perceptions of parents. And I hope some of you saw this in the news, but we did some polling of the public through Savanta Comres, sort of reputable polling firm. And what that showed us, firstly, is there's a clear majority of the public who support teachers taking strike action to secure better pay. The plight that the profession finds itself in is well understood. But what really surprised me is that parents were more supportive than the population as a whole, and that the parents of primary school children were more supportive than parents as a whole. I can sort of guess at the cause of that. I suspect it's actually the pandemic. Parents had a year, 18 months of learning just what an amazing job teachers do and just how challenging it is. And there's a sort of rediscovered respect for the profession. But I think it's really important we get that message out there to members that actually the public, parents are on their side. They understand why we're taking this action or seeking to. Skipping on, looking at areas with lower engagement. I'm going to flick through these relatively quickly. They'll all be available on the app for you after the event. If anybody's not got access to the event, if you email campaigns@mail.nasuwt.org.uk, and I'll read that out again at the end, we can send these on to you. But from there we go on to a focus on early career teachers, to sixth form colleges, the independent sector, and real emphasis on the last chance to vote before we get to Christmas. There's a temptation to think, oh, we've got a lot on, there's huge amounts to do around Christmas time for most people. I'll leave it until the new year. It'll be too late potentially, with postal strikes, with everything else that goes on. Putting it in the post on the 6th and hoping for the best isn't going to work. So we really need to all work together. All of you could play a huge role in delivering a successful result in this ballot just by talking to the colleagues in your school, talking to the other family members of yours that might be members of the union, talking to your friends and getting that message out there, and just reminding people that this does matter, that all the bits of mail that come through the door, actually the one with that Better Deal logo on is important. Don't put it in the recycling. Do open it, get that ballot paper filled in and send it off. And when you've done that, tweet about it, put it on Facebook, demonstrate to your colleagues that you are participating in the union's democracy, and get that message out there. And just to emphasise, because of those thresholds, actually, despite the National Executive clearly recommending to members they should vote yes to strike action and yes to action short of strike action, if you disagree and you want to vote no to both, still vote. Have your democratic voice and actually help the union meet the thresholds and prove to the government that they can't stop trade unions exercising their internal democracy and having that voice. So however you're going to vote, get voting and get those ballots back. Now I suspect, given the contracted time we had this morning, the rest of the session might be best dedicated to just pick up any questions around the ballot.
Not a problem.
What I will say is I'm not going to be in a position to answer any questions about the shape of any action should we secure a ballot result. National officers and National Action Committee are still considering that. But in anything in terms of the balloting process, the implications for members, all those sorts of things, very happy to pick those up as best as I can.
Lovely. Nafisa, you want one?
Nafisa, you just want to wait for a microphone, just for those who might need a hearing loop.
Hello, it's Nafisa Khan, Birmingham Association. A fair number of our disabled members are supply teachers, and I know that you've explained this to me before at the Supply Teachers Conference, but we've been having conversations in here and people saying, why have I not been able to vote? Why have I not had a ballot paper? So I'm just wondering if you could perhaps reiterate that conversation again, explain why that has happened. And then I guess the second aspect, which I think you've just mentioned already, what can we do in spite of being supply teachers and not having a right to vote? The sorts of things we can still do to support the strike. I've got many members of my family that are in the NHS, and I know they're voting to strike. I know the neighbour who is a postmaster, I know he is voting to strike. So I know it's not just teachers. So perhaps getting that out into the media as well. And advertising, the other one was talking about poverty, advertising, the different types of strike action we can have. I think that will hold quite a lot of sway amongst teachers that are very worried in their everyday lives about finances. Thank you.
Do you want to take a couple together?
Is there any more? Yeah.
Hi. What do we do if we haven't had our vote? My rep's asked us to sort of ask, because some of our members haven't received their ballots.
Great minds, because that was going to be my question, to say what if people haven't had a ballot paper yet, or what if they've accidentally chucked it in with the recycling?
I'll pick up those for in the first instance. I'm going to do the simple one first for the colleague at the front. Email ballot. I'll wait for everybody to pick up pens and paper on this.
Absolutely.
It to say is on the website as well. If you go to the contact us page of the website, it will tell you where to go. But it's ballot@mail, M-A-I-L, .nasuwt.org.uk. And we've got a team of staff across the union who are processing those, updating details where need be. You know, as I said earlier, I've spent 4 months sending out messages with colleagues in campaigns and communications team, imploring people to update their details. And yet still we're getting hundreds in a day of people saying, oh, I haven't had my ballot. It may have been because I moved house 7 years ago. So hopefully we'll have a much better shape membership system after this. Supply teachers. So some supply teachers will be included in the ballot if they are long-term attached to a school or workplace, where effectively they have an employer and an employment relationship. For those supply teachers who are working via an agency and don't have a long-term employment relationship, we can't ballot them. The more extreme example of that is we had one of our retired members saying that why weren't they being balloted for strike action? Was, you're retired, you can't take strike action. How would anybody tell you're retired? But that's a similar situation for our supply members, is that you have to be able to have a legitimate trade dispute with your employer. And most supply teachers who are working for agencies effectively be self-employed and therefore under the law can't be picked up on that. But it doesn't mean, one, that supply teachers aren't part of this campaign, and two, can't play a significant role. On the first point, at the supply teacher seminar 3 or 4 weeks ago now, we launched our Better Deal for Supply Teachers campaign around having better terms and conditions and working conditions for supply teachers. For example, trying to get rid of some of the sharp practices by umbrella companies and some of the agencies, looking at more ethical and inclusive routes around that. For example, trying to reinstate local authority pools, looking at cooperative models and the like, trying to secure access to the teachers' pension scheme for supply teachers. And also, I think it's fair to say that if we secure a pay deal of 12%, as we're aiming to for teachers, although that doesn't directly relate to supply teachers, it will have a knock-on effect. If the going rate for a teacher increases, supply teachers will benefit from that as well. And I suppose the very simple thing, in terms of how supply teachers can support it, use your social media, speak to your colleagues. If you've got colleagues who are employed directly by a school, make sure they're voting. And I'm sure I don't need to say this to anybody in this room, but in the event we get a successful ballot and take action, at risk of stating the obvious, absolutely do not cover for any colleague taking industrial action. A real important statement of solidarity and being part of a union. Hopefully that's covered those key points. Yep. One thing I would pick up on ballots, by the way, and I know this is an issue in some places, the complexity that I mentioned earlier in terms of having so many employers now. We think 23,000 is one of the figures I've seen put out, is we had a slight issue with the administration of some of the ballots, which means some members in some academies will have received a second green ballot. That's the important one to send back. So if anybody's received a white one and then subsequently a green one, send back the green one as priority. But the baseline message is, if we send you 2 ballot papers, send both of them back. It will cost you nothing, get both of them in the post box. Civica, what used to be electoral reform services, they will deal with the administration to make sure only the right vote is counted. So that's why some people may have received those 2 ballot papers.
Lovely. Yep. Got it.
Hello, Steve Wood, North East Essex. So in our household, my daughter teaches full-time. she's voted. Mum and Dad, me and my wife, are both supply teachers, so we can't vote. Does that work against this trying to reach 40%? Would it be better if my wife and I left the union because of, you see what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, on the 40%, no, it'd be 40% of the eligible members
Okay.
for this.
Okay. That's all I was
So, for
wondering.
example, we wouldn't include our members in Northern Ireland, Jersey, Guernsey, Gibraltar in this because they're not eligible to participate. Likewise, our members in further education. So, yeah, it's 40% of the eligible membership for the ballot and 50% of those who actually choose to vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. Any other questions? Good. I think the message is we all have to go out there and encourage people to vote and get the message out that it is really vitally important that they return that ballot paper and signpost them to that important email and to the website. I think there's going to be a link on it that they can click on if they haven't had a ballot paper to get one, can't they?
And as well as ballot paper requests, anything you have in terms of policy or campaigns questions around the ballot can all be sent into that ballot@mail.etc. address. They will all be picked up and all of the sort of campaigns or policy responses, questions will be responded to in full as well. So if on your drive or train journey home something suddenly occurs to you, don't hesitate to drop it into an email for us and we will pick it up.